All right, guys, how you guys doing tonight? So what I want to do is I really want to start to think about and weigh in on the Breonna Taylor discussion that we were having. And so you guys are starting to have a pretty good little discussion on it. I see that the thread isn't super long yet, but I'm hoping others will weigh in on it. This is a really interesting case. This is a true, somebody died. And the question is, are the officers at fault? Is the issue at fault? And so I want you to really think about the facts of this case, right? The officers have done enough due diligence to go get a no knock search warrant. These officers had put enough probable cause that there could be drugs in this apartment based on the totality of everything, right? They had the vehicle that was registered to Brianna was seen in front of a known drug dealer's house for multiple times, which is what gave them the probable cause to come to get the search warrant. Right? Search warrants are not just given because officers ask for them. Officers actually have to put quite a bit of work into it, a lot of due diligence into it, and then to go and ask for a no knock search warrant, which is even more riskier and normally takes a little bit. Judges really look at them a little closer, given the fact that the risk level there and right to privacy and some other Fourth Amendment issues. So they really kind of look at those closely. So, needless to say, these officers actually had a search warrant to go into Breonna Taylor's apartment, right? So they actually had a search warrant to do that. So did the officers have a right to be at the location? Yes, they did. So that's first and foremost. They had enough due diligence to be at the location. So that is a very important fact, right? Typically on no-knock search warrants, they're normally done early morning or evening. It's all about surprise, not having them see you coming or going. Typically, how those things are normally done is police, 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 bang, the door's being broken open. Or that we bang the door, then we're notifying law enforcement police as you're coming in, right? The reason no-knock search warrants are not used a whole lot is because they're extremely dangerous, right? If someone comes and bangs on your door in the middle of the night or early morning and you have a gun available, it's not unlikely for you to grab that gun and try to defend your family, right? Which is very similar to what Brianna's boyfriend, I think it's Washington Walker, Kenneth Walker did, right? So Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, basically grabbed a gun and shot at officers, right? So the officers, in response, returned fire and ended up killing Breonna Taylor, which is a tragedy because she was an innocent in this case. She was being linked to the overall crime of possibly having drugs in her apartment, but she was overall an innocent. She wasn't involved in the drug stuff. But the officers thought that there may be drugs in the apartment, right? So the officers had a right to be there to do the search. So when we look at this, they had probable cause to be there. The officers didn't do anything wrong. The officers were shot at. And when you're shot at, high likelihood you will return fire, right? Now, I don't know enough facts. I haven't seen the report exactly how Brianna got hit. Supposedly she went to the ground and still got hit at some point. There's multiple officers coming in to the house, and there's shots being fired. So, and then when I looked at the video, it didn't look like Kenneth Walker was really hit. So he was able to exit out on his own. Came out of the apartment on his own, right? Then he wasn't out with an ambulance or anything like that. So when you look at this case, officers had a right to be there. Officers were shot and defended themselves. In this case, I don't even think Kenneth Walker should have any charges filed against him, right? This is one case I don't think Kenneth Walker would have charges filed. If I was a DA, I probably wouldn't have filed charges on Kenneth Walker. Because from the perspective of Kenneth is, I thought you were breaking into my home. I was just defending my home. Unbeknownst to me, you were law enforcement. As soon as I realized you were law enforcement, I gave myself up, which you saw him do, right? So these type of things happen. They do happen. Not always do somebody ends up dying like what happened here with Breonna Taylor. So when I look at this, I don't necessarily know the officers were negligent in what they did. I don't think you have negligence here. Yeah, Brianna died. That's a tragedy, hands down tragedy. But the officers negligent. They had the right to serve a warrant. So then the question comes into, if we start negligence, did the officers tactically do anything wrong, right? And we look at tactics. Were they reasonable in what they did? Yes. One of the questions are, were they within their policy, right? Typically, you wouldn't have, when you do these things, normally at the front of the line, you don't do plainclothes officers, right? You do uniformed officers, hopefully, which would prevent the suspects from shooting at you, right? Because you're doing a no-knock warrant, you bang through the door, and hopefully at that time the suspects see police. Oh, these are police, don't shoot them, right? But in this case, the first guys through the door were plainclothes officers, right? So it even gives more defense to why Kenneth Walker, I would not charge Kenneth Walker, nor do I think he should be charged. But I also don't think the officers did anything wrong. One officer was subsequently fired in this case, and that was because of his actions of his discharging his firearm, right, in a negligent manner, which means he could have just been spraying rounds. He could have been shooting from a position he shouldn't have been shooting from. Could have been shooting over his partners or by his partners. I mean, there's some policy issues. He wasn't terminated because Brianna died. He was terminated because he violated department policy on how he discharged his firearm, right? And I don't think he was one. He shot, but I don't think he was one of the main shooters. So I just want to kind of go off this. We don't truly have enough facts, but on this one, on the case of it, the officers that were involved in it aren't going to get fired, nor should they get fired, right? And what ends up happening in this is Brianna's family gets a huge payday, and I think they end up with some like 20 million, or don't hold me to the number. You could Google it and find the exact number. But the Taylor family got a very large payment from the city, which rightfully should get a very large payment. But are the officers negligent? That's one I don't know. I don't really think you could say these officers are liable for what they did, right? There wasn't negligence. And so I want you to think about it. It's a horrible case right now. From a department standpoint, and from a criminal justice standpoint, from an attorney and lawyer standpoint, from this case, maybe we need to reevaluate no-knock search warrants, right? In California, drugs are so minimal, we don't even consider them felonies anymore. I mean, you have to have a ton of weight on you to be a felony. So in California, you won't see this too often in California just because, unless we're looking for a sizable amount. Like we think this is one of the guys, the distributors, right? Not a street-level seller, but like a distributor. Then we may look at doing something more high risk like this. But a lot of even in California, no-knock search warrants on a drug case, probably not going to see much. No-knock search warrants on arrest, or they know somebody's there, that you'll see. But on for drugs, probably not going to see that too much in California, just because drugs are basically misdemeanors in California, right? And it's too risky. So it's a very risky thing to do these no-knock search warrants. So from a department standpoint, I may look at it and be like, we may have an issue in, should we even be doing these, right? Not that these officers did anything wrong, but as a department, should we do these? As a department, should we have unarmed, or should we have plainclothes guys going in the door first, or should we have more tactical guys with tactical gear and shields and stuff going in the door first, which is what would happen in California. Again, California's trained differently than other states. We'd argue that we have higher training than other states. So it's just one of those things to think about. So I know some of you had some very passionate points of view on this about, these guys deserve to go to jail. Well, in this case, I would say nobody really should be going to jail. Not Kenneth Walker, not the officers. The officers that did the shooting probably should be, they're not going to be reprimanded, they're not going to be disciplined unless they violate some type of department policy, which obviously we don't have enough information relative to that. So I just want you to think about this case. I know it's horrible, bad things happen, but it wasn't an accident. Officers were there legally to serve a search warrant. They took fire, they returned fire, and Brianna ended up dead out of that returned fire, right? So just horrible, horrible, horrible thing. But you know, this is where we're at, right? One of those things that's an accident that someone's life was lost. But did the officers do anything wrong? Were they negligent? I'd have to argue no. Now, had Kenneth Walker not shot at them, now it's a whole different issue, right? That's a whole different thing. But they were shot. One officer was actually hit because of the gunfire and injured. It is reasonable for officers to return fire. So just want to share that with you guys from my side of it, the 2 cents on it. Please, feel free to respond back. I always look forward to hearing other people's opinions, so I'm not offended. So I look forward to seeing you guys in the post.